To the Crimson Stitchery, a video channel about making all things beautiful and useful. My name is Anushka and you can find me elsewhere online as a Sour Telling, and links for this video and show notes can be found in the down bar here below on YouTube. So hi, how are you? How are we suddenly finding ourselves at the end of July and in August? It's totally bizarre, but I've carried on knitting. I'm still making things, and in this fortnight's episode I've got quite a bit of knitting to share with you. I've got a lot of exciting yarn to talk about, and I've got lots of bits of mending to share with you as well. So let's get straight to it. Firstly, I'll just mention what I'm wearing, my knitted top, because sometimes I forget to do that and people ask me questions, but I do tend to put the links for the relevant project, you know, with details down below in the down bar here on YouTube, even if I don't mention it orally in the video. But it's a summer top that I knitted a really long time ago, and it's from a back issue of Rowan magazine, Rowan 31, a little cotton top with this little crossover Empire line bust detail in like a Rowan 100% cotton. And yeah, a really long time ago I made it. I was probably around 16 or something like that, so well over 10 years ago, and it's still going strong. And I remember that at the time, Rowan yarns, you know, they were like the thing back then, yeah, like 15 years ago. That was the main, you know, yarn brand. It's what you'd find in most yarn shops, and it was very, very expensive. But this top, because it was just a camisole with a low back, I only required a handful of balls, so I think it was only about £20 or so I was able to save up and buy that, no problem. But I was never able to buy a sweater's quantity of any Rowan yarn back then, and I'm going to talk about that later actually. But yeah, this little top, and it's really good. I think, yeah, it's issue 31, and it's a really good back issue with just lots of great little t-shirts and tanks and camisoles and other things. Yeah, just before I get into the knitting, a big thank you to everyone for your birthday wishes, and also for your birthday presents. Some of you sent me lovely messages and emails, and some of you bought me some coffees over on Ko-fi.com, so thank you so much for that. It is greatly appreciated and very kind of you. And yeah, I'm partly talking about birthday presents as well in this episode, one of which is these earrings that I got from a friend, and they're from Kenya, like hand beaded earrings, so that's really lovely. And yeah, let's get to it. So knitting, I've finished knitting all of the pieces of the yellow, painfully yellow, painful project. So to recap, this is a vintage pattern from Susan Crawford's A Stitch in Time Volume 2. And it's just called Tri-Cable Cardigan. You know, it does what it says on the tin because it's got this braided cable going down in vertical ribs. And I've done the front and back, I've done the neck collar band, which is safety pinned on at the moment, and I've done the 2 sleeves. And regular viewers will know how much I've been agonising about the fact that this started off as a project to use up languishing balls of beautiful yellow yarn that I bought whilst on holiday in Portugal a few years ago, as part of my Stashless 2020 initiative, which is what I've been doing this year. And I am going to be releasing a separate Stashless 2020 video, like a vlog, to kind of update on where I am with that. Not quite halfway through the year, but maybe 2/3 it will be. So look out for that, probably next week that will be coming out. Yeah, so, but the problem was I had bought 2 balls of yarn to make a scarf or a shawl, changed my mind, didn't have enough for a sweater, got an extra ball of yellow kicking around from a friend's stash and bought another one, and so I basically ended up with 3 different dye lots of this yellow, which was such a shame, because the original yellow that I actually chose and bought myself was actually the shade that I liked the most. So yeah, a bit of a pity. And I've had viewers comment actually saying the same thing, that they thought that they were getting an more acid yellow and they ended up with more of a true orangey buttercup yellow. But I've been agonising about this, and lots of people have told me to take a chill pill basically just chill out about it, because I think the fact that it's a cabled garment means that the actual texture and stitch pattern is casting an awful lot of shadow on the piece. So when you're staring at it up close, you can see the difference in the three dye lots and the three different tones of yellow that are in, but actually when you hold it up and when you stand back, they do blur into one, I think, and the stitch pattern itself does actually take over. So I've yet to seam it up. Obviously this has been sitting around for a while and I keep meaning to get to it and I haven't, and that's purely because I need a moment where, well, I need a few hours where I'm just going to be sitting down at a work table and seaming, and I just haven't found that time. So I don't actually have a problem with seaming garments. I don't have a problem with mattress stitch. I can just get on with it. I don't mind hand sewing. It's totally fine with me. But it's just having that time to sit down and do that finishing, because it's a bit more, you know, you really have to pay attention and look at it. Whereas I do a lot of my knitting just chatting with friends or chatting with my partner or watching TV and multitasking in that sense, and not just dedicating myself to it, which is something that I feel like I've had less and less time to do, just sort of dedicate specific time to make something as of late, but I would like to kind of reclaim that time. And it's sort of one of the things that I've spoken about on this channel before, was especially during the height of lockdown, there felt like there was this discourse that suddenly people had lots more time because they were spending more time at home. But for me, it actually felt the other way around. I felt like I had less time, I had more to manage, more, you know, we had more meals to sort out, there was so much more cleaning to do, having, you know, people at home all the time, as opposed to, you know, much less if we're going out to work and stuff like that, and just other things in general, like lots of other things came up during lockdown, probably with lockdown being a catalyst for things, if not a cause directly. So yeah, and we don't even have kids, and we would love to have a pet, but we don't have a pet, so it's, you know, it's just sort of the two of us at home being the main responsibility. Even so, I found it very, very strange. So yeah, didn't actually have any extra time in order to do these kinds of things, or maybe my so-called extra time got filled with other things like admin and sort of other work-related demands that came up. So that was that. So yeah, I need to do that, and I hope to do that sometime soon. And then the next project that I want to talk about is something that I started off the back of this quite randomly, but it brought me back round to my Stashes 2020 initiative, because I frogged, I unravelled, I ripped an old languishing work in progress whip that I had never got to, and I didn't manage to get to it last year when I hosted the Crimson Whip Along either. And I just thought, actually, do I really want to have this jumper? No, I don't. So I ripped it out, harvested the yarn, and cast on for, of all things, a Christmas jumper. Can you get, oh, it's a bit caught up, but hopefully you can get the sense of that. There is a Christmas tree in the middle of this white sweater. So this is Yulgran by Andy Satterland, and it has knit up really quickly. I think it's because after knitting a cabled garment with 4-ply yarn at a 28 stitch gauge plus the, you know, the cabling, and then going to this which only had an 18 stitch gauge, although my gauge came out at 19 stitches per 10 centimeters or 4 inches, that is. It just whizzed on by so much more quickly. It was so straightforward. Even having to tick off the rows of the Christmas tree chart, and also it's tiny, like it's got negative ease in it, and it just stretches out to fit the body. I'm feeling really warm just holding this up, but actually a couple of weeks ago when I started it, we had like that weird chilly week of July where it was raining and a bit miserable, and not the kind of summer weather that you expect. But anyway, yeah, why am I doing Christmas trees in July? Saying that, the Christmas tree that I bought for $12.99 in a pot from Lidl, the discount supermarket, and put it at the back of the garden is doing really strong. It sprouted new growth in the spring, and that's now settled down, and the new growth was initially a very bright green as opposed to the darker forest fir green, but then the new growth has now settled down, so the whole thing just looks like a much bigger Christmas tree, so that's pretty sweet. So yeah, my Christmas tree is doing quite well actually in the back of the garden. And I've got a Christmas tree here. So I've got one sleeve, as you can see, but I've just unravelled the bottom to add more length, because although Andy Sutherland always designs these cropped garments, but it's actually a bit too cropped. I think especially with the negative ease, because as things stretch out horizontally, they shrink vertically. And the direction given for the negative ease is choose between, I think it's 0 to 4 inches, but that's quite a big difference, like having something just sitting and skimming on your body as opposed to 4 inches of it stretching out around your body. Like the fabric's going to react quite differently. And I think I've ended up with, yeah, I think it's the 4 inches in the end, because I had to do a bit of recalculation because my gauge wasn't quite the same as in the pattern, yet I really liked the swatch that I produced. And, you know, that's something that I do quite a lot. And people have asked me for advice on that, and I'm doing my best to kind of think of a succinct way of talking about how to do that. So in the future, I will have more in-depth informative knitting videos and hopefully sewing ones as well, but it's just, as I mentioned last time, it's just a matter of having a very long list of video ideas to work through and slowly getting to them. Because at the moment I'm focusing on my sock series, so do click up to watch the sock series if you haven't managed to already. So yeah, recalculating the gauge, what else to say? I also added in this puff sleeve, so it's quite a square 1940s style puff sleeve. Hopefully you can get a sense of that. And then I added long sleeves too, because the originals, they stop here, like literally at the elbow, and that's not going to work out for me. I mean, if I wear 100% wool, hot, you know, tight Christmas jumper, I'm going to feel hot, and just having that forearm exposed is not really going to do it. So yeah, I might as well have long sleeves, but again, they're very tight, very, very tight. I mean, I could have changed that. I could have done a different decrease rate and added in more positive ease, but I wasn't quite sure what to do there, because it's like, if you have a really tight garment here, do you want a loose, slightly baggier sleeve? Probably not. You sort of just want the whole silhouette to be quite tight and form-fitting. So yeah, got one more sleeve to do. Got to add the ribbing onto the bottom now that I've lengthened it. And then I kind of can't believe that this has come out so quickly, but it is to do with the gauge and the fact that it's just stocking stitch. You know, there's not really anything to think about. Can just crack on with it whilst relaxing, which is a very nice thing to do. I enjoy relaxing. And then the yarn, yeah, so I was talking about the yarn because it's Rowan Kid Silk, what's it called? Rowan Kid Classic. And here you can see I've got 2 more balls that I've unravelled, and I've got so many swatches as well, I could probably get more out of it, but I'll definitely have some yarn left over from that. And again, Rowan Kid Classic, like 15 years ago, dare I say 20 years ago, I think it was all the rage. You know, it was like the yarn, because it's so fluffy. Because what it is a blend of 70% wool, 22% mohair and 8% polyamide. And polyamide is like the technical name for nylon. Nylon is like a brand registered name. So wool, mohair and nylon. So it's basically the equivalent of that trend for holding one strand of mohair yarn along with a normal like wool or merino yarn that's been all the rage for a couple of years. And this yarn basically does it in one. And again, I remember this being so expensive and like unbelievably out of reach, you know, out of my range. And I did buy this yarn in Black Friday sales, I think across 2 lots, because I was originally planning to make like a big sloppy long jumper with a big like cowl neck. But then in the end I ended up knitting my abstract caterpillar jumper I think it was last summer actually, I think it was this time last year exactly, out of like pinks and reds and oranges and greens and striped. And then when it came back to looking at this whip, work in progress, I was like, actually I've got an enormous jumper with a cowl neck, I don't also need a white version. And I also have some ready to wear cream sweaters in that sort of silhouette, like one I nicked off my partner because it's cotton cashmere, so it's lovely. And then I've got like this beautiful Irish merino wool cabled enormous jumper, which is gorgeous, that I bought from a car boot sale for something crazy like £1.50. So yeah, I've kind of got big oversized white jumpers, so actually having a little fitted white jumper is great, even though it's got this mad Christmas tree. And it's sort of, I feel like I tried to make it tasteful because the original pattern is written in this very bright green, very Christmassy, and a lot of people are knitting it in like a darker forest or a fir green, whereas I've gone for the white, but then I went and added this puff sleeve, so that makes it a bit more extreme, which I like. What else? What was I saying? Oh yeah, so Rowan Kid Classic. I always remember it being really expensive, but I don't know what's happened about Rowan as a yarn company, or maybe I'm just used to other yarns being more expensive. I don't know, but it sort of felt like it wasn't in that unattainable luxury price bracket. Or I wonder if it's because maybe their prices haven't changed as much and other things around it have gone up. I don't know, what do you guys think? Like, what are your opinions on Rowan, and do you use Rowan yarns? But one of the other things I was quite surprised about was that Rowan definitely market themselves as a very British brand, British heritage, and that's sort of in a lot of their styling, like a lot of their photo shoots being in sort of English country manor houses and things like that. But when I bought it, on the yarn label it says made in Romania for Metz Crafts UK Limited. And they're still based in West Yorkshire in England, in the north of England. But I thought that was interesting. So does that mean that they've actually been bought up by like a larger group, and maybe that's why their prices have changed? Don't know, it's funny, but it's interesting to see like something that markets themselves as really like quintessentially British or whatever. Actually, it's not in any way a small company. Yeah, don't really know where I'm going with this, but let me know, am I the only one that sort of noticed this thing about Rowan and them changing, like especially with like the prices and all of that kind of thing? So that is what I've been working on, just those. I need to seam up the yellow, and I'll probably finish that white jumper fairly quickly, as long as I can accurately reproduce what I did on the left shoulder with the right. But the next thing I want to talk about is some yarns. So okay, firstly, let's talk about these yarns. So I don't normally talk about yarns on the podcast, and I chatted about that before in a video I made called Why Don't Do Haul Videos, and I'll put a link to that on screen now, so check that out if you haven't done so already. I've had really interesting conversations and feedback from that video, so if you're fairly new to the channel, do click over and have a watch. But yeah, my friends surprised me with a bundle of yarn, and bless them, they had been doing all of this secretive investigative detective work to try and figure out like what type of yarn to buy me and what I'd need, and they got the colours spot on. So they had the idea that they were going to give me some really special, like amazing, fantastic yarn to knit like an ombre pair of socks, but it's absolutely fab. So it's this chain yarn, so it's like a loop through which like more fibre has been blown through, so it's like shiny and fuzzy at the same time, all in different two tones. And there's a greeny turquoise with black, there's a bluey kind of ocean marine blue with black, and then there's this silver with pale icy blue blown through it. So they're all these amazing two-tone yarns. And I was so amazed and touched, and it's from like a group of girlfriends, and they'd like clubbed together and bought me loads of birthday presents, which was really surprising, because I guess I thought that as an adult, like, you don't really tend to do presents. At least I haven't felt like that was a thing. Like, maybe I'll get birthday cards, or normally I feel like we go out for a meal, or, you know, just buy each other a drink or a bottle of something, but obviously that's difficult to do now in lockdown, and I personally am still totally paranoid about going out to restaurants, and certainly wouldn't go to bars and pubs at the moment. But yeah, anyway, people gave me loads of presents, which was really nice, let's face it, and I think I might get back into birthday presents, actually. I felt like a little girl, a little kiddie. So they gave me all of these, and what I'm going to do is knit another Andy Satterland pattern, so going with the novelty knits at the moment. So I've doing the Christmas one, and I'm going to go for her Halloween jumper called Arachne, which is basically another fitted jumper with a big spiderweb cobweb pattern on the yoke. Yeah, and I'm going to use this turquoise for the cobweb, and I might use this marine blue as like maybe the edges of the cobweb to have sort of almost like an ombre fade going through it. I'm not sure about the silver, that could be good for embroidery. My partner was like, oh, are you going to have a spider on the web? So maybe I could like, I'm not sure if that's in her pattern, but if it's not, I could maybe embroider something or use that to kind of do edgings. But I'm curious as to what the main colour of this jumper should be. So obviously it's getting quite novelty and quite extreme, like not my sort of normal like classic colours in knitwear, but why not? And I'm also really enjoying this opportunity to just say, I'm going to make this, plan it out exactly as I want it to be, get the yarn, and then just cast on and do it. And that's really ultimately what I'm aiming to do with this Stashes 2020 thing, like not feeling like I'm being plagued and followed around by old balls of yarn from old projects that I've had for ages, and feeling overwhelmed because I don't know how to get started to tackle and deal with everything, or feeling like I've just got too much, and yeah, feeling guilty. You know, I don't want to have any of those feelings. I just want to say I'm going to do a project, start it, and then finish it. And also not have too many works in progress, because then it just becomes unrealistic and I can't manage it. And I know people have got very different feelings about this, but I have found that whenever I just keep 1 or 2 projects on the needles, it just works out better. I get them done, I feel satisfied, I've got less clutter hanging around, I've got less mental baggage, and it's just, yeah, just makes sense to me. But it's hard. I have to fight this sort of urge to keep casting on, and it's constantly a battle like not to buy yarn, constantly, especially when you spend time around knitty people who are yarn evangelists, and who want people to buy like all of the best yarns all of the time and work with them and love them. So yeah, it can feel a bit of an uphill struggle, but one that feels worth it, actually, worth doing. So yeah, I've got this kind of turquoise metallic shimmery colour, possibly for the web, and I was thinking the body could be a hot pink, like a brighter hot pink than this cushion. And actually it might be nice to have like a hand-dyed hot pink, so that it was tonaled and mottled and maybe even a bit speckled with like darker bits, but I don't really know where to start with that. I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know how to get started. An alternate colour for the cobweb could be like a grey, like a slate grey, again maybe with some like tonal or speckly things. And I do know that, you know, it's not only hand-dyed yarns that you can get those effects with. There are more mass-produced yarns. I think maybe West Yorkshire Spinners, or even like a Shetland kind of heathered yarn, or tweedy yarns could be good. And it would be nice actually to have the different textures, to have the very shiny metallic yarns for the cobweb, and then maybe a slightly different one for underneath for the background, so that the cobweb really stands out. So yeah, I don't really know where to get started. Can you guys recommend some yarns? What do you think of my colours? Do you think I should go for the hot pink, or maybe the more of the steely grey with this teal turquoise web? Are there any yarns you think I could look at? Do you have anything in your stash you might like to de-stash to me? Hit me up in the comments down below and let me know what you think. I always really value your input when it comes to these things. The last thing I want to talk about in knitting and in my knitting basket is socks. So the Crimson Sock Along is still running, and I also wanted to announce that I have finally managed to set up an alternative shop front to Ravelry. So I did put a notice about this on YouTube and on Instagram, but in case you missed it, my knitting patterns for the Crimson Stitchery are now also available on a storefront called PayHip, which just allows you to buy them as a downloadable PDF through PayPal, you know, whether you have a PayPal account or whether you have a credit card, so it's quite straightforward in that sense. And then, yeah, you can just get hold of them that way and don't have to have a Ravelry account. So the link for that is below, and thank you very much to people who have been buying my patterns in recent weeks. And also, so for the Crimson Sock Along, I have decided that I will keep the Sock Along hosted on Ravelry and also officially host it on Instagram as well. So there was already a Crimson Sock Along hashtag. So if you have cast on any of my sock patterns since the beginning of May and you haven't used the hashtag Crimson Sock Along, and added that to your post, please do go back and do that so that they can all be collected together, and that so that you can be eligible for one of the prizes. So I have decided to change the rules. So I had 3 prize categories originally, all on Ravelry, but I've decided to take one of those and allocate it to Instagram. So if you use the Instagram hashtag, when I do the prize draw all the way in October, you will be eligible for one of the prizes there, just if you have used that hashtag. Again, from May to October, if you cast on any of my sock patterns. And obviously the more posts you do about it and the more of my sock patterns that you knit, the more chances you'll end up of winning. And then I will keep 2 of the prizes for the Ravelry group specifically. So I've been hinting about the prizes for a while, and I'm going to show you half of them because some of them are here now. Thanks to a very generous viewer. Thank you very much, Amanda. Amanda got in touch and just asked if she could donate something to the sock along because she wanted to get involved, just off the kindness of her own heart. So I've got 2 lovely prizes here, which are Kwagu Painter's Palette Premium Merino. And so this one here has got all different shades of blue, purple, pink, and a little bit of burgundy there, kind of aqua and navy. So that's really nice kind of cool tones there. And then this one here has kind of got the opposite. So it's mostly got all of the ready warm tones, the mauve, a little bit of orange, purple, and then brown, and then it's shot through with the aqua kind of sea green kind of colours. So those are really lovely, and Amanda said that you should be able to get, obviously depending on your foot size, but you'll definitely be able to get a pair of shorty socks, the trainer socks, out of them. Or, you know, if you then used a contrasting yarn for the heels, toes and cuffs, you might be able to get a pair of little ankle socks out of just one skein too. So that will be 2 prizes for 2 winners there. And then I also mentioned in last episode that I was going to be donating this skein of Kooknik socks, as well, in this really lovely soft tangerine colour. And again, you will be able to get a pair of shorty socks out of this, no problem. And you can probably eke out a pair of short socks too if you are creative. Definitely if you've got tiny feet. But I do not have tiny feet. Let's not discriminate, and let's be clear about that. So yeah. Very lovely zingy kind of almost like, well, it is like an ice cream kind of palettes, different flavours. You've got your blue raspberry, you've got your summer berries, and you've got your classic orange and mango ice lolly. So yeah, 3 skeins of yarn, and then I have another set of things that I'm still going to save for next time. So keep watching to find out what those extra prizes will be. But yes, they are all sock related. Yeah, and I just hope that you have fun knitting my patterns. People seem to be. Everyone's giving me such great feedback about that. So thank you for joining in, it's been really good fun. And then just the last thing about the socks is that I have decided not to release a sock pattern in August. I just needed to give my hands a break because of all that small circumference knitting and just, you know, other things that I'm doing, other things in life. I just had to physically give my hands a break and do a bit of work on like stretching and yoga and things like that. I'm definitely not working in the optimum manner of sort of designing and producing knitwear and writing patterns, but I'm sort of, I guess I'm kind of new to this, and I'm sort of building all of these systems, and I've been running the Crimson Stitchery for 1.5 years now, and then doing patterns sort of, yeah, maybe around 1 year, or a little bit longer now, but I'm sort of juggling it with lots of other different things. And yeah, I think in the future, obviously, that in an ideal world, you'd plan it far more in advance, like 6 to 8 months in advance, and you'd have everything written and ready to go. And I think I will get there at some point. But yeah, it's sort of, I guess, me experimenting and trying things out and having ideas and seeing how you guys are receptive to them, and people have been really encouraging. So yeah, once again, thank you so much for your enthusiasm and ongoing support. But I'm not going to be doing one in August, and so the sock designs will return in September, sort of lacy and well-fitting sock designs for the warming weather, because I don't know about you guys, but we all often get what's called an Indian summer in the UK, and that September can often be very warm and even into October, and you can get sort of like chilly moments and cold winds, but you still have some really lovely sunshine. So yeah, lacy socks still could be called for then. And then another thing that Amanda sent me really kindly was a skein of hand-spun yarn, and I've only worked with hand-spun yarn on another occasion ages ago, again when I was a teenager learning to knit. I was probably about 17, and I bought some hand-spun singles, like thick and thin stuff, so it was totally different from this, and I'm really excited about my second opportunity to work with hand-spun yarn, and it's gorgeous. It's all like barber pole, and it's got orange and blue and turquoise and pink, sort of similar to the Kwagu ones that she sent as prizes. So thank you again, Amanda, and I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to make, to be honest with you. It's just one skein, so it would have to be either as a contrast with something or an accessory, but I don't need any hats or cowls. It's not what I'm thinking of. I actually thought maybe a cushion cover, something for the couch, could be fun, especially if it's kind of mixed in with other stuff. And yeah, do you guys have any suggestions for hand-spun yarn patterns? Like, what's the kind of best way to show off the colours? I have a feeling that it's going to be doing a plain stocking stitch or some kind of boring stitch pattern so that the yarn itself can be shown off. And I'm also wondering just like how it's going to turn out, if it's going to pool, if it's going to stripe, if it's just going to look really multicoloured. So thank you so much for those gifts, and I'm excited about the prizes, and I'll keep revealing more about the prizes to you guys anon. Next up, I'm going to chat about mending. So recently I've decided to move all of my sewing gear out of my tiny flat, and I've decided to colonise the guest bedroom at my grandma's house. She only lives a 5 to 10 minute walk away, depending on how fast or slow you're walking, or how long it takes you to cross the junction at the interchange, you know? Do you know what I mean? When you're sort of standing there for ages waiting for the lights to change, and sometimes it just doesn't happen. But yeah, so I've set up a studio, a workroom there in the spare bedroom, and there's way more space, and it's just amazing. I've got two surfaces. I've got a pattern cutting table, and I've got a machining table where I just have my sewing machine and overlocker out there, and it's just amazing. Like, it's going to be so much more efficient. Even though it takes me 10 minutes to walk there and 10 minutes to walk back, I would easily spend far longer than 20 minutes in my tiny flat, kind of getting everything out, tidying up, searching for all of my materials that was stashed about everywhere under the bed. Like, it was just horrific, because with the knitting I just have a knitting basket, this one just stashed next to the couch, and some little cubby holes where I store all of my yarn, but with the sewing stuff it was just increasingly just terrible, quite frankly, and I couldn't cope with it anymore. And my grandma really wanted to see more of me. Obviously she's a very sociable person, and that's one of the things that she had struggled with during lockdown, was that she couldn't go out and hang out with her mates. she's super sociable. She does so much stuff normally with people, whereas, you know, I'm a bit more introspective. I'm very happy in my own company, don't mind having kind of hermity moments. But yeah, she's not like that. She really needs to be out around people, and she'd found that really hard in lockdown, especially at the beginning when we were like, well, we're not really meant to be seeing you because you're old, you're meant to be staying in your place. So that was quite hard for her. So she wanted to see more of me, and it was getting very difficult with juggling work and working from home, and trying to explain to her that although I was at home, I was actually working, I still was maintaining office hours, like I couldn't just come over whenever in the day, and so on and so forth. So long story short, I've set up a sewing studio there. Are you interested in seeing it? Would you like me to do like a 5-minute long studio tour vlog video? Let me know. And it's also really nice for her because she can also use that sewing studio. She can go in there whenever and have all of the machines laid out and have enough space, and yeah, just all of the equipment there just to grab onto. So it is for her as well, and she's quite pleased about that. She has already used it for a couple of different things. And then it is in the spare bedroom, so it's obviously not a purpose-built studio still, But I've looked into renting artist studios many times, and it's ludicrously expensive in London, like ludicrously. And I do have friends that rent artist studios and as artists, as fine artists, and it's so expensive, and it just eats up so much of their money, and it sort of feels like this bind where you end up just working all these terrible jobs just to pay the rent on your studio, and it gets really hard to like find the time to get into the studio and actually make work. So I'm really excited about that. At the moment, the knitting is here at home still, and I might move that over there in the future. But at the moment, mostly in the studio, I've been trying to finish off unfinished sewing projects and do mending, because my mending pile is always very big. So yeah, it's sort of been nothing too spectacular at the moment, but I think it will move into more spectacular projects in the future. But yeah, so mending. Did some mending there, and now I've been covered in yarn. And what I've got, oh, it's just started to rain outside, great. What I've got here is a vintage cardigan belonging to my partner. I always end up doing lots of mending for my partner. I think he doesn't actually buy that many clothes ever, so just his existing clothes just get worn more and more and more, especially as a lot of them are vintage. So this is, I think, 80s. And I think it was from a vintage shop in Sweden, but I think it's an American cardigan. Brian McNeil, with like a suede piece here. So it's a rather lovely little thing, and it had suede buttons, but 2 had fallen off and there were no spares, so I had to change all of the buttons on that into these rather lovely vintage buttons, plastic. And if you're interested, or if you have got some tedious button sewing tasks coming up, I do have a video on how to sew buttons onto a cardigan in an efficient manner, so do click up on screen there to check that out. So I did that, so that's one. And then another button thing on this shirt. I think it was just missing a couple of buttons, so I just had to look for a shirt button and pop that on there. So just a small thing, and it feels good to get this mending out of the way and just do the mending, and sort of just every time I've gone to the studio and sat down in the space, I've just pulled one thing out of the mending pile and just cracked on with that. So as you can see, I've been in the studio 3 times over the last 2 weeks to do work. And then last thing is just this little t-shirt. And yeah, actually the shirt was secondhand from a vintage shop in Sweden, really nice one. And then this t-shirt was also secondhand, just given to me by someone who was cleaning out their closet, and it's just a little white t-shirt, nothing special, but I somehow really like the cut of it. It just sits really nicely, and I like the fabric. It's a little bit thin, and just really comfy to wear. And all it was that the sleeves were becoming unstitched, because, you know, it was secondhand. And I just zipped along that with my sewing machine on a zigzag. I didn't even rethread my overlocker to wait for it. I just did it on the machine and got that out of the way. So sometimes with the mending it feels a bit overwhelming, because a lot of the time mending is not straightforward. It's actually a specific skill. Mending, repairing and alterations, you know, it takes a whole different way of thinking. And a lot of it is about fit and fabric characteristics and properties and fitting your body, and there's a lot of creative problem solving in it, which I do enjoy, but it can be tedious. But every time that I'm mending, I just think, gosh, I've got so many clothes, you know, there's sort of almost not really the need to make things from scratch. And I quite like that. I think I'm getting to a place with both my knitting and my sewing where I've fulfilled the immediate need to have clothing for me, for whatever reason, you know, and unless there's like a specific, like I need X item, like I need X pair of trousers or blouse or whatever, and I'll just go ahead and make that. But yeah, I feel that sort of kind of urgency, and I'm getting to a really good place with it where I can be creative with it. I can make choices, I can do something for an aesthetic reason or a more academic reason, if I'm trying to explore something, if I'm like trying to learn how to do different types of pockets or buttonholes or whatever on earth it is. And I can also think more as a designer, because I'm not just thinking about what I want to wear, but I'm actually thinking about putting ideas together and exploring concepts with clothing as the medium. And that's a really exciting place to be, and I'm really looking forward to having that, well, enjoying using that space to kind of sit and think and explore in a kind of dedicated fashion. Is that classic, like a room of one's own? you kind of compromise for so long, but it gets to a certain point where actually just having that dedicated space is just absolutely amazing. And you know, it's still a shared space, it's still a guest bedroom. My sister stays there quite regularly, you know, other people stay in the guest bedroom, and it's not mine per se. I'm lucky that my grandparents are quite open to let me have that space. And you know, I like you know, having an impetus to go around there and spend more time there to work as well. So yeah, that's been really lovely. And one day I will have a room of my own, and I will have a studio space, and I will like be more integrated with a community of other artists. I really hope so. One day in the future, in the Crimson Stitchery. So that's it from me today. I've got loads of stuff I'd love to hear from you about, especially about the yarns, about the hand spun yarn, about the spiderweb sweater, and you know, I'd just really enjoy hearing from you in general. And thank you again to everybody who has bought me a Ko-fi in recent months, which, if you're not aware, is a way to donate to the podcast via PayPal, which covers a lot of the running costs. I can honestly say, like, literally, you guys are keeping the podcast running in so many different ways, so thank you for that. And yeah, leave me a comment down below. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Give me a thumbs up if you have, and hit subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I'll see you again very soon for more chat at the Crimson Stitchery. Take care. Bye bye.